Hi, my name is Emma Lawler, and I'm a UX designer here at AKQA. And I'm going to talk tonight about what it's like to design experiences for people in a culture 10,000 miles away. So I've always been really interested in traveling and getting to know people in completely different cultures. And I've also always been interested in kind of women's rights around the world. So last year, I started a company in the graduate program I was in. We were based out of Boulder, Colorado, and we were really interested in the culture of East Africa, specifically Nairobi. And the reason we were so interested in it is because a lot of articles and people we talked to were describing it as the Silicon Valley of that part of the world. And so we started thinking, how could this be such a prevalent thing that's talked about when what we usually hear about is how much aid is going there and the kind of help they need. So we started out by just talking to hundreds of people there and connecting with them over social media. And then we decided to start a company called Kubmo, which gives mobile packages to women who are between the ages of 18 and 24 to start businesses. And the end goal is that they'll be able to be financially independent in the end. So we put them through a year program with mentorship and the phones and the data. So here are a few lessons that we learned while working with people from this culture. Social media access is really open to everybody, and that's because Safaricom, which is one of the biggest telecom providers in that part of the world, along with Facebook and Twitter, has given free SMS access between any mobile phone and those platforms. So that really opens up an entire group of people to a mobile market that wouldn't have been able to do that before. And so SMS is just a huge thing to think about. Instead of native apps or an iPhone app, you can think about how can you interact with someone through an SMS message. So this is the type of phone that we gave the 10 girls in our first workshop. It looks like an iPhone, but it is a much lower functioning version of it. But they're still able to use it, have applications on it, SMS, and all of that. So someone could be standing in one of the slums like Kibera in Nairobi and have no electricity, but be able to talk to people through social media. So they won't have electricity, but if anyone's ever been to a festival or anything like that where they have a bunch of plugins where people stand around and plug their phones in to charge, that's something similar that would happen in Nairobi in the slums, but they would pay for it as opposed to having electricity in their house. And so it just completely has opened up a new market to tap into, and I think that's why companies like Facebook and Twitter are trying to tap this market before a lot of other products have gotten there. When we first started talking to people, we went to the radio Facebook pages that were in Nairobi, because that's a really popular thing to be talking about there. And we just started messaging people over Facebook. And we were really surprised by how interested and open people were to talking to us. But we were really shocked by how great they thought our idea was. And then we realized that they were just trying to make us happy. And so we had to start asking a lot more open-ended questions. So that they weren't just saying, oh yeah, you guys are great, and they actually told us what their needs were. So when going into a developing market or any other culture, it's really important to understand how they communicate and kind of the cultural norms that go along with it. When we first started working with one of our partners there, we sent over some wireframes, and they took them and didn't really say anything, and then just said they were going to have their graphic designers do it instead. And so we realized that they didn't understand, or it wasn't commonly known that you're supposed to iterate through processes and even what user-centered design is. So we found from then on we really had to explain the design process and the reason that we might be sending them something that doesn't look good or function yet. And I think that here in the US, we're really used to getting products tested on us And it's such a common thing that we don't even think that in another culture they're used to getting finished products, or at least the people that we worked with, that was the case. There's a woman named Dambisa Moyo, and she recently wrote this book called Dead Aid, and it talks a lot about how aid going into Africa is actually not helping the culture and not helping them rise up as a country, and that's because they become dependent on the aid. And so that's something that we found to be very true in the market that we were working at. We had to very much differentiate ourselves from being a charity, and instead had to say, no, we're an actual company, we want to make money, and that allowed people to trust us a lot more because they didn't think we were someone just going there and giving aid to feel good as Americans. And I think this rings very true for a lot of people in the culture. Giving things for free, they might not completely trust it the way we do in the US. So overall, for thinking about going into an emerging market, is that there's social media for all, so thinking about how you can tap into new markets like that. For mobile phone access, when thinking about responsive design, it's not only mobile first, but it's often mobile only because they've completely skipped over needing a desktop or a Wi-Fi and gone through mobile. You have to be careful, really careful about having any sort of leading questions. And iteration isn't common knowledge, so it's really important to talk people through any process you're doing with them. And also that giving things for free might not translate the same way it does in the US. So we were able to tap into a market 10,000 miles away without actually ever being there. And a lot of that was just learning the culture and working with people who are very immersed in it. And I think the main thing that I came away knowing is that how I use a product or want something to be is very different from someone in another culture. And so knowing the culture and understanding the people is more important than anything. So the company is Kubmo, and feel free to reach out if you're interested. Thank you.